Yeah, to start off this, welcome to Space Tech.
Juma umejimute.
I wanted to welcome you all from on this Space Tech. This is our first virtual event that will be hosting mostly on weekends. And today, I could welcome our speaker of the day is Victoria Mutai, who will be taking us through introducing Flask and development on REST APIs. Uh, Victoria, welcome. You can introduce yourself, then you can start the session of the today.
Thank you so much, Juma. Hi, everybody. Let me just start my camera. So, hi, everyone. My name is Victoria Mutai. I am a software developer at Ascent Compliance. What I do on a day-to-day is develop UIs, scripts with Python, also clean up data. And yeah, I love Flask. Flask is my everyday tool. Today, we're just going to do an introduction of Flask and then a bit of REST APIs and then some demo. And yeah, I hope everyone will enjoy, everyone will understand what we're going to learn today. And then I'm going to start sharing my screen. But before I start sharing my screen, I'd like to know who has any experience with Flask. On the chat, Ama, you can just lift your hands. Who's used Flask before? Stanley.
Can I create a poll on the same?
Yeah. So you have Stanley. And also who has worked with APIs before, whether it's building yourself or consuming APIs. So while we wait for the poll, Jeremiah, George, Stanley. We have a couple of people who have used it before. That's awesome. And the rest of you, don't feel left out. We are going to learn from the beginner's point of view. Nothing too complicated. And we have the poll. Feel free to respond. I hope everyone can see the poll. Okay. Adrian, Stanley. Kila mtu amerespond to the poll.
We have got 2 polls on. One is asking if you have got some experience with Flask, and the other one is if you have used APIs.
I think someone has said hawajaona the poll, so I'm going to just share my screen and show you where it is. So on this side of the screen, you click on this triangle, these 3 things, and then polls, and then you'll find the person who has experience in Flask and have you used APIs. So you can respond there. I think we can just go ahead for those who have already responded. When you
for the start poll, that is Flask. That got it has got 8 votes. 11% have not used. 9 out of 11 have not used Flask. Then yes, that is 2 who have used Flask before.
Yeah.
Then for the APIs, out of 11, that is nine have used APIs. Then
Mm.
no, that is two have not used APIs.
Okay, that's good to hear. At least we have a balance of the people who have used APIs and who have never used, which is a good thing. But today it's just as beginner friendly as it can get. Um, so I have shared my screen for the presentation. Okay. So Flask and REST APIs. So just the agenda today, we're just going to look at a brief introduction to Flask, setting up Flask, the templates, Flask routes, Flask forms, and the best practices. This is beginner friendly. And then on the REST APIs, we're going to look at the principles of REST APIs, Flask RESTful and Flask API. And then we're going to do some demos uh, using Flask, using the APIs, and we'll be testing it on Postman. So we can go ahead and get started. Flask is a framework for Python that helps in building web applications quickly and efficiently. Um, so Python, as we all know, it's a very robust language. It's used for machine learning and AI, for data science, and for a lot of other things, for web scraping. But with this framework, Flask, we can use it to create web applications. And we have a lot of frameworks, but either you can use Flask because Flask is very lightweight. It doesn't have a lot of dependencies when you're starting to install. And then it's beginner friendly, and then it's simple and easy to use. I want to think Django is a very good framework, but if you are a beginner, I think it's easy to work with Flask, as it just gives you experience of working with Python, and also working with HTML, CSS, JS. So it's simple and easy to use, and then it's also flexible. It has good documentation for every developer, especially the ones that have not encountered Flask before. Make sure you go through the documentation for Flask. It's quite easy to understand, and then you can learn it very easily. So getting started with Flask. Just by the way, if you have any questions, feel free to indicate on the chat, and then we'll have after everything is done, we are going to have a question and answer session. So to get started with Flask, you first create a virtual environment. Virtual environment, think of it as a container where you put all your code. That means you are working on 10 different you have been working on 10 different projects for Flask, and then each is on its container virtual environment. Each is on its container. That means any problem on one any issues with the dependency are not going to affect the others. For example, you started working with Flask 2.0, and now we are at Flask 2.2. So that first application, if you're going to run it inside a virtual environment, it's not going to have any effect on the others, because dependencies, say Flask 2.0 and Flask 2.2, might have some differences, which may cause a lot of problems. And then, so the first thing, you're going to create a virtual environment. So on this side of the screen, it's just the instructions. And then, and then on this side, it's just the code snippet. So to create a virtual environment, you just Python. For my laptop, I use Py, but other laptops, you have to write Python -m VNV for creating the virtual environment, and then the name of the virtual environment. Then once you have created it, you're going to activate it. You're going to start it, so that anything you're going to install is going to be inside that virtual environment. And then next, we're going to install a Flask and Python.env. Flask is our application for building websites, and then Python.env allows us to run applications simply by using Flask run. And then next, after you have run this is running the terminal. We're just going to have an overview of it in the demo session. And then after you have done that, you're going to use you're going to create an environment file, which is a .env file, just .env file, and store all the environment variables. In our case, the environment variables is setting debug to true, and ensuring, because right now we are developing, ensuring the Python development environment is the environment we're using is development. And then also declaring where we're going to start on the Flask app. So on this part where we have indicated Flask app is equals to app.py, basically it means app.py is the starting point of our application. So in other cases, you'd have main.py or others that you're going to think about. And then you can run the Python file. Something very important to note, images and CSS files, JS files are stored inside a static folder, and HTML templates are stored inside the template folders. This ensures that when you're working with HTML, when you're working with the static files, they are all stored in the same place. So the basic application structure of Flask looks like this. You first import Flask, and then the first one you import Flask, and then you create an instance. Every application for Flask, you have to create an instance where you write app is equals to Flask_name, and then define the root of your application, and then create a function of our homepage. I'm just going to, before we get to templates, I'm just going to do a demo for this. Just let me create a new file. You can just do a trial.py file. I have already installed all the requirements, the python.env and the Flask environment. So I'm just going to change here to start at the trial.py. So as I said, you first import Flask. From Flask, import Flask, and then app is equals to yeah. And then we will define this root app at app dot oops dot root, and then this will just be our home page.
Victoria,
I hope you can see my screen. Yes.
there's a request for someone is requesting to, you can zoom in your screen.
Just a moment. I'm zooming out. Please let me know when it's good enough. Is that okay?
Someone can reply with an emoji. Yep, it's okay.
It's okay. Okay. So I'm sorry for that. In case of any issues, just feel free to unmute, and then you can let me know what is the issue. So first, as I had said, we have imported Flask and then created an instance. Then the next, I'm going to define this root. Why is it doing this way? Then define, let's call this our home. So normally this is just defined as the usual Python function. I have an issue here. I'm not sure what is the cause of this. Oh yeah. So define home. This is our function for home, and then we're just going to return just something. This is our home page. We're not going to use templates first in this case. So when I access it via localhost, yeah, it has an art app. I'm not sure what is causing this error. Well, okay. We're just going to go to
Oh,
templates. Yeah.
yeah, I think you have that at app dot route. Maybe you should remove that. Then maybe we try.
It's not working. This is just that day. Let's just copy this and see if it's going to work. Then, because they're not rendering any template, I'm just it was working. And then it's weirdly not giving us any error. Okay, let's change this route from home to something else. Well, let's go to templates first, and then we'll come back to this. Because I'm sure it will render the templates, but not just that way blank. So Flask templates, they help us. From that previous demo, we were just printing out whatever we wanted to appear on the web page. We're just printing it out as a return. So Flask templates allows us to print out all the data that we want on the HTML pages. So which means we are able to style it, and we are able to print out as much information as we want. We can be able to use different things, say CSS, JavaScript. We can also use Bootstrap to just display our pages the way we want it. So the advantage of Flask templates, it allows us to display dynamic content to our pages. We can also reuse common elements across multiple pages. For example, the layout. For example, you have 3 pages, and then you want them to have the same nav bar. You can just simply reuse it. So to use the Flask template, we are going to import the render template. Let's go back here to our code. So we also import the render template. So we're going to render it to home.html. So notice I had said that all the static files are stored in static, and then templates are stored inside a template folder. So in our case, we have about, home, and profile. So we're going to display the home page here. So we have returned home.html. think it could be an issue with the here, not here on the environment file, but it's okay. Okay, let's try and return this to update.py and see if it's going to work. Because update.py has this information. Okay. Is it that day that the demo is not working? This was working a few minutes ago.
Victoria, shouldn't you run the app, the app with the variable app?
I had set it up on the .env file, so
Oh,
it doesn't. It's not supposed to cause an error.
okay. Okay, I've been following. I went to Stack Overflow to follow up on the error. So what I've run, I've run Python -m Flask run so that it can go inside the .env file to find the specific Flask, the specific file we want to run.
Okay, let me just do that to see.
Python, yeah.
If that works, wow. Wow. Yeah, that's good. So it's giving us an it's because on this homepage. Expected line 2, but I have commented it out. It is. Okay. I'm not sure what this error is. Oh, yeah. Hi. So we have rendered this homepage. Thanks. Thanks for that. For that idea, it worked perfectly. So I had said earlier that sometimes you can actually pass dynamic content into our template. So here I'm just going to give a list of languages. So this is our list. I'm going to just write 3 Python, and then Go, and then Java. So if I want to render these languages into the front end, I'm just going to declare this variable and pass it here on the render template. And then here, I'm just to display it, I'm going to, I hope everyone has at least some bit of knowledge on HTML, CSS. So I'm going to put it inside a list. So you'll notice it won't print out first in a list. It's just going to give us the variable that was passed. In this case, we have Python, Go, and Java. So the beautiful thing about Flask templates, it allows us to do conditional formatting and looping. So we are going to do conditional formatting here. this is how you write it. So we are just going to do for language, in languages, and then we're going to print out the language, and then remember you have to end the loop. So here we end for Sasa. I hope you can all see it. Let me just. So this is how it prints out the list. This list that we provided here on the. Sorry, let me just close this others. This list that you provided here, that's how it's printed. But for example, you want to also use if. We're going to create another one for if, and then we want to skip every to skip the languages that are, for example, we want to print out. We have this list. We want to skip Python and just print the others. So here on our list, we're going to add an if inside, same way that a for loop is added. So if language has to be between this is equals to Python. Oh, we can just say is not equal to Python. It prints, and then we end if. Okay. Which day is it? Oh yeah. So language was not supposed to be inside the it's called the not double quotes, the curly braces. So we continue. If language is not equal to Python, it's going to print. So it prints for us Go and Java. There are a lot of other things that you can use here. I had said that you can implement. You can actually use a single layout across different files. So I'm going to just create a layout.html file, and so on this layout, I'm just going to add basic HTML information, and then in this case, you can just write basic. And then maybe we can add another. We don't have a bootstrap CDN here. I hope yes, we're still together. You can still see. Maybe. So you notice this is in a different file. We want to implement it here. So we have extends. So we're just going to extend the layout file. That means we're not going to reuse. We're not going to rewrite the layout. If we want it to stay like this, we're just going to let it stay like that. So once we refresh our specific title head. Oh yeah, I know what I did wrong there. So once you extend a layout or any other file, you have to put the rest of the file into a block. So, the block. So it's giving us an error. Mm, I'm just going to open a file. Oh yeah, block content. It's supposed to be block content here. So this should work now. Why though? Okay, but it's not extending the layout. Okay, let's start again. It's extending this layout but displaying the layout inside on the title bar. It's not giving us. Who has an idea what this should be? Oh, I haven't ended the block. Okay, we can skip this part for now for extending the layouts, and then I'm sure I'll figure out something before our presentation ends. Okay. Next, after that, we can just add the different links to the different pages. So we're going to add the link that goes to our about page. So here on trial.py on our Python file, we are going to add a root for our about page. About page. And then we are going to just define it here. And then we're going to about.html. That about we just let me comment this out so that it doesn't give us any errors. So when I click on this, I haven't put the URL. So to put the URL here, I'm going to do this. I'm going to use URL underscore 4, and then I'm going to put about. So basically, what this does, it tells our code that it's the URL for the about root. So we're going to check if it's so. So it gives us an error because we have a form that I was creating there, but we'll deal with this form once we get to the next step on Flask forms. So I hope until there we are still together. Guys. Unanisikiza?
Yeah,
Can you hear me? Okay, sawa. So until there. Next is the conditional formatting. What we have done, it allows us to loop through variables and also use conditional formatting wherever it is applicable. For example, you have a lot of conditions that you want to put. You can use if else, you can use elif, just the normal conditional formatting that we use in Python. You can translate it here on this Flask application. The next one is the Flask routes. So for the Flask routes, it is declared using the app.route decorator. Once you have done that, you can also include parts of your URL that are dynamic, and then also you can use the different methods, different HTTP methods. For example, if you're dealing with a GET request, you're dealing with a form, and once someone submits, we're going to use a POST request. And then, sorry. Okay. And then if you're using GET request, PUT request, but if, sorry, yeah, if you don't indicate anything, if you're not going to indicate any request, any methods to be used, it's just automatically going to use the get. So we're just going to show an example of how to use dynamic routes here. I'm just going to create for the profile page. So I'm going to declare a route for the profile page. Say the profile has the username, has a user ID in our case. So after this, we're going to make up a route for profile, and then we're going to return profile.html. So already the profile.html is created here. So if we're going to pass a dynamic route, we're going to have it here, this ID, and then also here. So let me just confirm so that we don't have them. Okay. So if we open localhost/prof, it is giving us an error because it was given. Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm supposed to indicate here user ID is equals to user ID. So I'm going to save this. I had not saved this. Wow, today things are slow this side. Oh yeah. So it opens the profile page, and then let's see, the profile page was empty. It's supposed to give us a username, but we have not passed a username. So in this case, because we had passed a user ID, we can just also pass a username here. This is usually useful if we want to have people click on their username and it leads them to their personal profiles. I'm going to show you how we're going to use that. So here, I'm just going to output the username. So it displays the username. So if we want to let the user navigate to the profile page, then we're going to use it has passed username as the value. But once you have once you're using a database, or you can just leave Wiki as the username here. So when you go here, hasn't it saved? Yeah, it's going to print out our username. That's how dynamic variables are used here on the, when you have them here on the function. But now when we get to forms, it would be more advanced. You can pass values that, for example, someone has a list, say Python, and then this list of languages, and then you can have them pass it. You can have your users, when they click on Python, it leads them to the Python side. So what I'm saying is, actually we can change this to just languages. It goes to the profile page, and then you can pass here the language name. So and then here on our home page, we can make these languages a link. href is equals to slash pages slash our language here. Let's save it. Username. Oops. Did oops. It requires username instead of language name. Okay. Oh yeah. Also, this language is supposed to be inside the curly braces. So I'm just going to refresh this page. Yeah. Then when you click Java, it's going to take us to the Java page. So for this, you're going to just have information on the different things that you want to display on that specific code page. I hope worry about that. So the Flask forms are, there are several ways that you can create forms in Flask, but the most common one is using the Flask form. So the WTF forms are the easiest way to display forms in our Flask applications. So to use the WTF forms, you simply use Flask and you simply install Flask underscore WTF, and then you're going to import all the necessary modules. The advantage of using extensions and libraries that are already created is because it makes work easier for us, or simpler for us. And then, for example, the WTF forms have provides protection from CSRF attacks, and then it also provides a variety of form fields such as string field, integer field, boolean field, select field, and more. So on this side, this is the code snippet for, sorry again. this is the sorry. This is the code snippet for the Flask form. You first import the Flask forms, and then using WTF, you get the string field, submit field, and select field. As you all know, the select field is basically for the drop downs. And then you can also import the validators if you want to have like to require all the data. So I had already done this. So we are just going to look at the code here. You can just copy this to go to our working project, this trial.py. So another good practice that I can share with you, you can actually, instead of having all this all our forms here, we can create a Python file that we're going to store all the forms. So this can be you can just leave it as name form, and then we're just going to import all the right things here. So this is just basically a class that contains languages, all the information for the form that we want. And then here on the trial, you can just import from import name form. So it's going to bring us the name form here. So it imports all this data that is here, but we want specifically the name form, so it's going to import it here. So that helps us to have our main file not so bulky, and then also like we don't have a lot of things on the main form, and then all the forms can just be here so that it's easy to work on. For example, you have 10 other forms to use, you can just paste them here. And then because of time, we're just going to copy this. We'll use this one. So what this form does, it validates. For example, a user submits their first name, the last name, their email, and languages. It's going to return hello, the first name, tell me more about the languages that they have chosen. So on our about page, let me simply uncomment here. So you notice there's this form.csrf token. These CSRF tokens prevents CSRF attacks, which means we are making our app more secure. So when we go back to home, we click to the about page. Form is not defined. When you always remember when you're passing your data, here on the render template, if you have anything that you want to display on the Ginger template, on the HTML template, make sure to pass it here. So I'm going to simply, okay. So this is how the form looks like. You on this form.py file, you see we declared this the languages that we want to talk about. So I'm going to write input. So we can do then we can use the language Java and submit. Method is not. Oh, you remember I said templates allow us to pass information. and the only method, like get is just the basic method, the default method. So in this case we had not used any methods here, so I'm going to use methods is equals to, and then get, because you're going to get the data back, and the post for sending data. For example, you want to make edits, use put, use delete. You can use as many methods as you want in this form. So you can see it gives us the output. Hello John, tell me more about Java. So that's how Flask form works. Then finally we are done with the basics for Flask. The rest of it, I'm going to like write other like using the databases on my blog, and then I'll share with you guys on LinkedIn or on Twitter. So the best practices for Flask. The first one is using blueprints for organizing your code. A simple way of using blueprints is having the templates and static files together, having related views. An example of what I have done is having all the forms on one file, so that we just simply import all the files. And then next, use Flask extensions, for example, with WTF forms and Flask SQL Alchemy. There's a typo there. And then there's Flask login. People have created libraries that make work easier for us. So when you're using Flask, you can simply use Flask extensions, because they're built to be more secure, and it's easy, especially if you want to build an application, a web application fast. Next, use environmental variables for configuration. All your variables, you can put it in the .env file, and then you can just simply import when you want to use them. This is especially if you're using databases and things like that. And then use templates for rendering HTML. This makes your code easier to maintain and ensure it's secure. It prevents a security attack, as you're not displaying the data that you have, that is from the function into the HTML code. And then use HTTP methods correctly. For example, if you are doing GET request, just use GET. If you're submitting a form, use POST. If you're editing, use PUT. And then if you're deleting, use DELETE. And then error handling. Make sure you use error handling. Python has vast ways of Flask has vast ways of handling errors. So make sure to use error handling so that your users can also understand whatever is happening. As you can see, like right now we have set debugging to true. But for example, the errors that we're encountering, if we did not, if it's just normal users who are using your application, it would be so hard to understand whatever is happening. So make sure every time you use error handling mechanism. And then for your servers, if you're developing locally, use the development server. And then once you push into production, don't use your local servers. Use servers like Gunicon or USGI. Yeah. And then make sure to write tests. Tests are very important. They ensure every part, every function in your code is working. So that's it about introduction to Flask. Any questions before we go to APIs? You can unmute and ask. Or you can write on the chat. Okay. If you
Any
don't,
questions? Na madam mko tu sawa?
Amani, a lot. Okay, if we don't have any questions, I'm sure we'll handle also at the end. So, next, we're going to talk about REST APIs. So I'm going to give you a scenario to just explain what APIs are. Um, for example, you want to charge your laptop. You have the socket, you have your laptop, and then you have the cable for charging. So the socket is where we get the electricity. So in this case, the socket is a server. And then our laptop is just the same here in this scenario. It's the mobile web or desktop client. So this cable for connecting to the socket, the charger, is what in this case is our API. So basically, an API is an easier way of accessing data because it takes, in this case for charging, it takes electricity and puts it into our laptops using like the different cables, the different wires. We don't want to know what happens. So in case of REST APIs, it allows us to get data from the server into our mobile phones, our websites, or our desktops. So APIs mostly deal in a server client mechanism, where our server is where we store all the information, and then there's the REST API where gives us response to all our requests. For example, we ask it to give us a data of all the books in a specific library. So the REST API is going to give us all the data in that specific library, all the data of that book. And then, for example, we want the book Becoming by Michelle Obama. It is going to give us information about that. So that's what REST API does. It acts as an intermediary between the client. In this case, the client is our mobile phones, our websites, desktops, and the server where all the data is stored, a database, different things. So when we send our request into when we send requests, what a REST API does, it converts that request, gives us a response in JSON format. We're going to look at it in just a few minutes. And then REST API is a way of accessing web services in a simple and flexible way without any processing. So we're going to look at the principles of the REST API. First, client-server architecture. It's responsible for the user and the server for the storage and management of resources. So the server has the resources. As users, we want the resources. So the REST API acts as an intermediary for where users can get the resources from the server. Cacheability, it allows us to, once you make a request to get all the books, you don't have to keep repeating the same request every time. It holds temporarily those requests that you have been making. And a good example can be when you're installing say Flask and you had already installed before. In most cases, you'd see it's just collecting the Flask from cache. It's not going to their website to get that information. So that's cacheability. And then it has a uniform it has to have a uniform interface across all resources. And then it's layered. So for example, you want to remove different content components, for example, for deleting or things like that. It should not affect our system. So we're going to use RESTful APIs to for this example, and we're going to just do a small demo because time has been fast spent. So just for this, I'm going to create a new file, api.py. so that there is no confusion. I'm going to push all this information to my GitHub. Then I'll share the link later. So, I had created something before, but I'm just going to go through each line of code explaining. So first you import Flask, definitely. And then from Flask-RESTful, you import the API, resource. These are very important modules. And then the app config, and then the API as app. This is creating an instance of the API. So we're going to do a to-do list. We're building an application. So the first task is design the front, design the UI on Figma. Next part is implement the UI. Or we can start with the implement the backend, and then we're going to implement the front end, and we're going to do and then finally just had to copy paste. Finally, the last task we're going to do is test your application. So this is just a list of to-dos. I would have used the database, but just for the sake of time, we're going to use a list with a dictionary that contains the tasks that we want. So we're just going to pass this, and then each of the each of the each of the functions that we're supposed to do is grouped into a resource. As you can see earlier, we had imported the resource. So for the resource, you can see ours is called class to do item. We have the get, and then you have the delete. So you see here there's a function that stops this code from running if it doesn't exist. And then delete, we have the put. This is just for one item. So if we want the entire to-do list, we have this that gets all the to-do list, and then this that sends to the server. So this function, you remember the function that was here? We created a function, this one, sorry. It checks if we have the to-do ID in the list that was provided by the to-do. So in this case, it's this one. So finally, we add resources to the to-do list. So you remember we had created here an instance of the API. So here at the bottom, we add resources to that to-do list. So one thing, when you're working with APIs, you need to first come up with the interface that you need to come up with a list of resources, a list of services that you're going to provide. So in this case, we either have our users pull our entire to-do list or one by one. So in that case, there's a to-do list, and then there's the resource for to-do item, which is here. So once you have created the API, just a moment, I'm going, so that we don't have to cancel everything again, I'm going to move this to api.py so that it runs the API. So, and I'm going to make sure it's running, and then I'll come here to Postman. I hope at least some of you have used Postman before. Postman is a tool that is used to test APIs. It's very instrumental. You can create APIs using Postman. You can import existing APIs and review it. And then a very good use case for Postman is converting the APIs into Python. Once we are done, when we want to consume the APIs, I'm going to show you how to do that. So create new, and then this is just a basic HTTP request. When you're on this point, when you're writing a request URL, for example, you want your API is secured, you have to include the authentication, say the API key and things like that. So in our case, it's nothing. If you have any headers that you're sending to your users, so because our code is offline, I'm going to use the local host. Get this request, and then we're going to look at the first resource, which is the list of to-dos. Once I run it, oops, it gives us a 4.4 error. I don't think. I hope it's now using, it's running on the API.py, so it shouldn't show anything. Okay, so as you can see, let me increase my so Postman helps us display whatever output that we want. So here you can see it has given us the entire list of to-dos. For example, in this list of to-dos, we had the post that adds information into the to-do. So we're going to try that. We're going to add let me reduce the screen for a moment. So this post, it takes a task and then adds it there. We're going to just add it here as key and value. So here we have 5, and then the value is deploy application. We come back here to our code. Actually, it's not post. So it still displays. That means that route is not working. You can simply work on it, which we'll do a little bit later. But we are able to view the list of to-dos that we have. Next, we can just check if the other one is working. I'm just going to repeat the same process. Create. Oh, yeah, I know why this was not working, because the method was not post. So here the key, I'm going to put 5. And deploy application. Okay, it gives us a bad request. Okay, we can just leave it at that. So for this, in order to view item by item, we're going to follow this format where there is the to-dos and then the item ID. So if we put the first task, that is design Figma, and then for example we put, it's going to give us to-do does not exist. So this is where this helper function comes in. Once we try and test an ID that does not exist, it tells us to-do does not exist. So we can check the others, still is a to-do does not exist, and things like that. So for example, you have finished testing your APIs and you want to implement this into your code. As I had told you earlier, Postman helps us helps us get the code from Postman. It converts it into Python or any language that you want. So for our case, we need Python, but if we wanted R or PHP or HTTP, whatever, or JavaScript, it would have given us. So for our case, we want a request for Python. So you simply come here, get the code snippet. I hope you saw where I clicked. It was on this one. And then I'm going to just copy the code snippet. We are going to consume our API from, oops, I did not copy it. We'll use this, doing the wrong thing. Okay, so this is a library that we're going to use here. And you notice it has not been installed on this virtual machine. So I'm just going to quickly install it. So pip install requests. That's how you're going to also import every module that you've used today, the .env, the Flask-env, and when you're using login, Flask login. So it should change. So, first, what you're going to see, this request, it processes it and gives us results as JSON. We can also import JSON so that it's easy. You can easily read our code. So what I'm going to do, it's on the wrong file. This is not our file. This was our file. Sorry, let me just copy it into our file. Sorry again. So that we don't get a lot of confusion, because that has a lot of other information. So I'm going to use an app route. Just check the list of to-dos. So I'm going to define a route called to-do. And then I'm going to copy all this into our route. So if the payload and the headers are empty, I'm just going to remove it. And then we can just stick with as little information as we can. And then I'm going to convert this into just JSON. And then we will return a render template that goes into todo.html. Then we're also going to send out this response to appear on the page. So Oh yeah, I'm supposed to create a to-do file. Let me and look at it from the UI. So we will run this file, maybe the trial.py. Actually, I had not said earlier, but you can use this to run the files. So I'm 100, but I'm kind of doubting if it's going to run because we have already another server that is running the API. But ideally, that's yeah, it's running. Okay, it's running on trial, so we can try if this to do will work. So yeah, it's working. And then if you can check one of them, yeah, that's basically it. And then you can later work on making it look more lovelier. And yeah, I think that's it from my side. Thank you so much for listening in. I'm open to questions. Yes, please. Anyone with questions? Okay, I'll send it to Juma, Tech, and then they'll share.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Uh, this is not like or anything. What has been your experience with Flask, maybe in terms of building large projects? Uh, when it comes to delivering, for example, you have a client who wants an application, and when was the time, at which point did you become like, I'll just use Flask, like Flask was your tool, the first tool that came to your mind, and what were the kind of considerations or judgments that went about choosing Flask over, I'm a Django person, I've used Django for some of my projects a lot, but I usually feel like Django has like, it's an overkill for example, a to-do list app or a small application. like a meta framework. Yeah. So
Mm.
what are kind of the considerations you've had in terms of picking Flask or going to Flask and building things very fast? And what other tools did you use together with Flask that made it easier for most of your projects and would inspire most of us to also build things with Flask also? Yeah.
Okay, so first reason for Flask. For me, from my experience, Flask is easy to use and easy to understand because I have used Django. Um, I was previously a very big fan of Django, uh, but Flask, it's easy to use and implement. And then, as I had said, that the dependencies for Flask is just minimal. That means you can. It gives you both an, especially if you're a person who you 90% of the time are using Python for other things. It will enable you to just use your knowledge on Python to easily implement into into your application, because unlike, I think, Django is a little bit not more complicated, but a little bit more complicated, especially for beginners. And then the libraries that come with Python are easy. And then one tool that all the time I use with Flask is the Firebase database. It's just easy to integrate for me. And then also building APIs are so simple when you're using Flask. As you can see, like we've just come up with an API for to-do list. And then for small scale applications, Flask is easy to use, considerably easy. Did I answer you, Felix?
Yeah, a lot. Actually, I never knew that you can integrate Flask with Firebase. I think that will be like a bonus to really build things with Flask also. Yeah. Thank you.
uh, Actually, you can reach out to
Yeah.
me. You can reach out to me if you want to like learn more about integrating Firebase with Flask. And then maybe in the future we can also have a session by Speciatech of Firebase with Flask.
Okay. Have
uh,
you also built maybe serverless functions using Flask and deploy them? Okay, what's the experience with deploying maybe Flask APIs or serverless functions on the cloud?
uh, well, until last year November, it was so much fun to deploy Flask APIs, because we're using the free version of Heroku unless it's a really large scale application. But I think it's easy to deploy. Like from my experience, it's very easy to deploy because there's the WYSGI and Gunicon. Let me just type it in the chat. That you can easily deploy, and then also like there are a lot of tutorials for it. So also I am currently deploying one application into AWS, which is also quite not as hard as it should be. It's like it's easier to use it. So what I can actually do, because I have an upcoming LinkedIn post for deploying a Flask application. Maybe once it's up, I can send you, and then you can use it as a guide.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. I think that will help me also. Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Oh, you go. Thank you. Oh, you are in DevFest Eldoret. Thank you so much. Okay, other questions? Do we have other questions, or I can hand it over to Juma? Okay, Juma, you can take over the session. or anyone
Hello.
from Space. Yeah.
Yeah, Victoria, I want to thank you for the session. Very, very insightful. Hope everyone has learned something or another in the session today. We'll be hosting more session like this on Saturdays. So check out next Saturday for another session on a different topic. So at the moment, you can call it a day. And we want to thank you, Victoria, for taking your time to be the speaker of the day. And to our audience, we thank you for taking your time to attend the session too. You can say have a nice day on your end. In case of any question, you can DM us on Twitter or any social media platform that is Aspeciatech shall give you answers on any question. Victoria has shared a link of the presentation. So